Good morning, AP World History. I hope all is well with you. I thought I would give you today's context in a little video as opposed to typing up a whole bunch of stuff in Google Classroom. What we're going to take a look at next is the concept of nationalism. Now, nationalism, of all the isms of the 19th century, proved to be the strongest. You just don't have to go any further than World War I to understand what I'm talking about. Nationalism was at the core of the structural causes of the war. It was nationalism that put Gavrilo Princip on the corner of Franz Josef Strasse and the Apple K with a loaded pistol, all right, in 1914. The capitalists said that war would be terrible for business, and the war came anyway. And the socialists insisted that war would be terrible for the workers, but the workers all willingly marched to their respective frontiers. So nationalism really proved to be much stronger than communism, socialism, imperialism, utilitarianism, and any other ism that you can think about that came out of the 1900s. Now today, nationalism is generally considered a conservative philosophy, but it really didn't start that way. It actually started out as a liberal philosophy. It was in the sort of liberal side of things. If you think about the American Revolution, you think about the French Revolution, and what's going on here? Well, one of the things that's going on is that subjects, right, are being transformed into citizens. And sovereignty is being transformed from a monarch to a citizenry. So what is the organizing principle for a king? Well, the organizing principle for a king is a monarchy. Well, what's going to be the organizing principle for a nation full of citizen rulers? And the answer is going to be a nation full of citizen rulers. It's the only logical way to organize citizens into some kind of coherent body is to think of them as being part of a nation state. Now, Napoleon Bonaparte is going to take this concept sort of a step further. And he is going to give nationalism a tremendous boost based on what I like to call sort of proactive and reactive ways. Proactively, right? What you find out from Napoleon is, OMG, what can a nation full of people do if they are properly motivated and fairly well led? The accomplishments are quite amazing. I mean, if you think about Napoleon's conquests and the wars he waged, he accomplished in maybe 4 or 5 years with revolutionary France what Louis XIV had wanted to do and couldn't accomplish in 50 years of non-revolutionary France. So nationalism is a tremendous force that can be harnessed and put to some purpose. Okay, that's sort of the proactive way. The reactive way is about, well, how do you compete with a nation, right? How do you deal with a conquering, occupying force? Who wants a whole bunch of saucy Frenchmen hanging around criticizing their cuisine and their lovemaking, right? So the only way to resist a nation is with another nation. And so you're going to see, with the defeat of the various German states at the hands of Napoleon, you're going to see a tremendous nationalist reaction, particularly in Germany. Okay, the father of German nationalism is this fellow by the name of Johann Gottlieb Fichte, who's writing in around 1808, 1809. He wrote his famous address to the German nation, which is kind of interesting because there's no such thing as the German nation, but it existed in his imagination. And so people are kind of reacting to Napoleon in a negative way and understanding that if they're going to fight a concept like a nation state, they're going to have to form a nation state of their own. So it really gets a big boost in the age of the Napoleonic Wars. Now, nationalism is going to take a big hit as a result of the defeat of Napoleon and the Congress of Vienna. Okay, I always like to think of the Congress of Vienna as the famous nursery rhyme. I'm kind of taking some liberties with Humpty Dumpty here, but if you think about it, all the king's horses and all the king's men, tried to put Europe back together again after Napoleon. Napoleon was a revolution on horseback. He rode in, he swept away princes, he swept away dukes. He took redid the map of Europe, cobbled together the Confederation of the Rhine, built the Duchy of Warsaw, and once he was defeated, all of Europe had to be sort of reset. And the idea, right, of Clemens von Metternich was to try to return Europe to about exactly what it was before the French Revolution. Now, that's going to be impossible. You're never going to be able to stuff that genie back in the bottle, but they're going to try to do their best to make it as close as possible to what it was like before the French Revolution. That's what we're talking about with the Congress of Vienna. So the guiding principle for Vienna was something called legitimacy. Wherever possible, try and take the legitimate ruler and place that son of a gun back on his throne, if at all possible, if it makes sense. Now, the other guiding principle of the Congress of Vienna was the balance of power. The idea that if you create 4 or 5 roughly equal powers within Europe, you're going to maintain a certain degree of peace. Nations do not like to go to war if they're not sure they can win the war. And they're going to not be sure if they can win the war if they're going to face off against a power that's roughly equal to them in size and strength. So you would have Russia, Prussia, France, Spain, and Great Britain. And that would sort of be the balance of power. Now, the other thing that kind of comes out of the Congress of Vienna is this idea that liberalism, wherever it may pop up on the continent, needs to be suppressed. Okay? You're going to see efforts to censor newspapers. Political parties are going to be outlawed and driven underground on the continent. I like to think of Metternich, right, who's operating this whole system from Vienna, Austria, playing a game that I used to like to describe as whack-a-liberal. So some of you had me in world history might remember my little whack-a-liberal game, right? It's just like whack-a-mole, except instead of a mole popping up somewhere in Europe, you've got a liberal popping up somewhere in Europe. And usually the liberal is somebody who's talking about nationalism, right? Free speech, free trade, these sorts of things that liberals talk about in the 1800s. And the idea is that just like with whack-a-mole, whenever that liberal pops up, you take this big old hammer here and you try as hard as you can to smash him on the head. And you're going to see that, from about 1815 until about 1848. Now, in 1848, there's going to be a series of revolutions, and that's going to pretty much sweep away the system of Europe that was established by Metternich. And they're going to have to come up with some other sort of system on which to base Europe. Now, this is about the time when liberalism is going to start to lose control of nationalism. That there are going to be people, particularly Otto von Bismarck, and we'll get to him later on, but particularly Otto von Bismarck, who are going to recognize that there are two choices we have. We either get run over by liberalism, okay, and nationalism, or we get control of it somehow. We kind of elbow the liberal politicians out of the way, and we get nationalism firmly in the hands of the conservatives, and we run with it. So that's where this is kind of heading. It's going to be the revolutions of 1848 that are going to reveal the weakness of liberal nationalism. Right? Liberal nationalists want to bring about a nation state through debate and kvetching and discussion and compromise and more debate and some more kvetching and some hair tearing and stuff like that, right? Otto von Bismarck says the way to bring about nationalism is not through kvetching and debating, right? But through Blut und Essen, right? Which translates into blood and iron. Actually, he said Essen und Blut, iron and blood, but that's basically what he's talking about here. So another way I like to characterize this is that, while liberals have the idea of nationalism, it's the conservatives that have the muscle to actually get it done when it's going to get done. So that's what we're going to be looking at for the next few days, and I hope you enjoy. See you later.